and welcome to Coffee with CiCi. I am your host, CiCi, a first generation immigrant chasing the American dreams. So this will be our fourth episode. As many of you know, that I'm actually originally from Shanghai, and today is February 1st. It marks the first week in a lunar calendar. So this is our very first show of the new year. Hey, hooray for that. Um, and we also wanted to take just a moment to send our best wishes and to all of our listeners who celebrate or recognize the Lunar New Year. I really wish you health, happiness, safety, and prosperity in the year ahead. And we are very excited to bring out that positive new year energies and successful glories to you and to achieve new heights in 2025. And also, they thank you all for your participation, commenting, and sharing your wonderful thoughts and beautiful hearts previously. And it truly shows our guests that you are right here with us. And so together we can grow faster and greater. And as you know, that each episode that we dive into our personal experiences, a growth challenge, and those trophy moments that we make life so fascinating. And by sharing those stories that we hope to inspire and empower each others to navigate our own journeys with more confidence and resilience, right? And today, actually, we have something special for you because we are so blessed and to welcome a fantastic, affluent speaker and my professional coach. So he carries the best energies and passionate about work and life. So he speaks three languages. He comes from a rich history influenced by various empires and cultures, which is Bosnia, Southeastern Europe. And he's an investment professional with a background in finance, leadership, relationship management, and get ready to expand cultural adventures and horizons and as we embark this learning journey together. So Boyan, good morning and very welcome to join us today.
Good morning, CiCi. Good morning to everybody listening to Coffee with CiCi. I've got my coffee, so I'm not breaking the rules, and I'm so honored to be here with you guys. All those things that CiCi just said about me is just so humbling to hear, because I was just telling CiCi, if I told my parents that I would be on here talking to you guys, they would say, well, who wants to listen to you? So I'm just humbled to be here. All those nice things CiCi said, really excited to share anything I can from my perspective and my journey to help out with your, finding your path in life.
That's beautiful, Boyan. And to be honest, I'm the first person will be fascinating about your successful stories. So let's explore together. And Boyan, that's we really treasure your engagement, your time, and this is really gracious because and also this is our very first time sit down conversation with a gentleman coming from Bosnia, and so I think the full name should be a Bosnia Herzegovina. Is that right?
Bosnia and Herzegovina. Yeah, it's a long
Okay.
name. Yeah, BIH. I saw you wrote that to me in email. I know you did your research.
Thank you. Thank you. I tried. I tried. So, and I learned that it has a long and rich history that dates to a really Neolithic period. And so the history is really marked by a rich tapestry of the cultural and religious influences, and making it a unique and diverse nation. So other than what we met or you met here from ChatGPT or Copilot. So, for those haven't exposed to Bosnia, and we love to explore Bosnia from your eye, and then say that maybe will you help us to paint a picture for those first time hearing about Bosnia, and such as like locations or size, population, climate, or word that's anything famous about a Bosnia. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a country that I was born in. I moved out of there. For anybody that's not familiar with that region, it's as CiCi mentioned, we've had a lot of kind of different chapters of rule, of kingdoms, of different conflicts. So it's a country that's been through many different periods. We used to be one big country called Yugoslavia. When I was born there, that a war happened that broke that up into 7 countries, which turned that into Bosnia being one of the 7. And I lived there until I was about 7 years old. So my perspective, going back was very much an American one, because I started to go back really in my teens and really as an adult. As a teenager, I remember going back and thinking, I just want to go back to the United States because we didn't have the same technology and just all the toys and stuff you love as a kid. Nice basketball courts to go play with my friends. So I just wanted to go back to the United States as soon as I left. But it was like, for me, my time to see my grandparents, to see my cousins. So, but really going back as an adult, I started to understand the country a lot better. I'll start with, it's just naturally such a beautiful country. I think part of the lack of like a first world development that you see, where giant cities are everywhere and you have all this infrastructure, Bosnia has retained a lot of its natural beauty still. You can go and find a lot of really natural rivers, forests, mountains. It's truly a beautiful country to see. And it's one of those countries, there's pollution near some of the cities, but when you get away into the mountains, it's like when you breathe the air and you can like breathe like truly clean air. It feels like it's like cleaning your
Right.
lungs out. There's
Right.
that feeling, and I really love that. So there's just kind of this natural rawness to Bosnia that I really appreciate, that's hard to find in places like the United States, because there's just so much going on and there's people everywhere and there's just so much technology. So you get away from, you go back to Bosnia, there's truly villages. You go, and like my grandparents lived in a village, you go and it's like a lot of barter economy, right? So it's like a very simple life, and there's something just very nice about that, and appreciating that, and getting it really like slows life down. And in our life now, where it's just like so in your face with social media, 100 news headlines, you're trying to keep up with all this change, AI. It's nice to go back to this very simple life and world. And it's almost like makes me think like, oh, we're really losing our way with not including more of this in our lives, this simplicity.
It's beautiful. And can you share a fun fact about Bosnia that people rarely recognize?
Let me think about one. So Bosnia, fun fact. Oh gosh. um, there's a couple things I can think, but like most of them are dark. Um, Let me give you a good one. Can I give you a couple from like the region more so? Because there's like some interesting things just from that region. Like, because I'm my descent is, my mom's side is all Serbians, my dad's side is all Croatian. So there's just some interesting things I've just learned from the region. Like the Croatian side, that's where the tie comes from. So that's one interesting fact I always like to share, is Croatians are the ones who invented ties, which is so funny to think
Right.
about, because I think when I think of our people, I think of, again, villages and farmers and a very simple life, not people that would invent the tie. But it was actually, the tie was this war garment that you used to wear. And if you look up the first ties ever, they don't look like what our ties look like today, but soldiers used to wear them. And from there, the idea of the tie evolved, and now we have modern ties that we wear into the office today.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And of course, Boyan, that we love to hear a fun fact about you. That's something special that you haven't reviewed on other platforms yet.
Oh gosh, okay. So I love to DJ. I'm a DJ. That's like my what I like to do in my free time. I DJ'd my wedding, and part of that comes from my dad. Was actually, he always tells me how hard life was over there, and I'm sure we'll talk about that some more. And it was. My dad went through things that I will never have to see in my life, but my dad's 20s were a fun time. My dad was a DJ and worked on a radio station. So during the day, he'd go run the radio station, and then at night he'd go run off with his friends and DJ at a club actually. So like you had a good old school Eastern European club in the 80s. And I think like you'd walk in and there'd be cigarette smoke to the ceiling. So it was not a healthy place, but my dad had this love for music. And honestly, that love for music and was what got my dad into American culture. He started to love 80s rock music. He fell in love with movies like Top Gun. He fell in movies later on like Pearl Harbor. And that is a lot of what brought us to the United States, was my dad's really appreciation for this idea of the American dream and kind of like what you could achieve in the United States. So his music, I think, is my interesting fact. I always loved music. Well, growing up, I wanted to be a music A&R, like one of those people that I thought I had a good ear for music. So I could like hear somebody that didn't have a lot of plays on YouTube, and I'd say, oh, this person's gonna have a lot of big songs in the future. So I wanted to be one of those people that could be like an A&R. And I never thought I would be good at any kind of music because I couldn't play instruments, but I actually can't see it behind me, but I have my DJ deck behind me. So that's what I like to double as after my finance job is over in the day. My finance job really just helps me finance my failing DJ career.
fascinating. And Boyan, and I'd also like to share with our listeners about, your personal fascinating journey that you had. I learned that you entered this country as a refugee like 23 years ago, right? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we moved here. Do you want me to tell you kind of just jump into that story?
Right,
So, as I mentioned, I was born in Bosnia. I was born in 1993. For anybody that kind of knows the history of the region, late 1992 was when the entire region fell apart into war. Basically, there was conflicting ideas about the direction of the country. There used to be one leader. Bosnia was like this like a it was like a socialist country that was like had some communist values that were similar to what you saw in the USSR. But it was interesting, like Yugoslavia, which was the country before Bosnia, was very similar. And oftentimes, like people in the Western world, like Americans will think like, oh, you were part of the USSR, and we were actually not. The Bosnia, like Yugoslavia, we had this leader that was named Tito, and he was like the one who kind of united the country at the time, for better or worse. He was like a dictator, but a good dictator. He did some good things, did a lot of bad things as well. The opinions definitely separated on how people feel about him. But we actually, part of his leadership was that he never aligned with the USSR. So we were always kind of our own thing. So what happened was, because of all these kind of split nationalities and religions and ethnicities within Yugoslavia, there was a lot of split on, which way the country was going to go after he passed away. So he died, I think, somewhere in the, I'm going to get this wrong, somewhere in the late 80s, I think. And then shortly
right,
afterwards, the country held together for like just a couple years without him. And then war started to break out. So my parents thought it was the joke I always make to my mom is, why did you think it was a good idea to have a child in the middle of conflict that you knew was breaking
right,
out? And my mom always says, she doesn't find it as funny. She says, I needed a light in the darkness at the time, and that's what I was for the family. So I was born in May of 1993. So this was like, not to be dramatic, but the worst time of the war to be born. And I lived in Bosnia, which Bosnia, if you understand the region, Bosnia is right in the middle and was
right.
the most ethnically split. So most of the conflict was going on in Bosnia. So it was a bad time and bad place to be born in the world. Actually, speaking of ChatGPT, I asked as a joke one time, ChatGPT, if you were born in 1993, give me the top 5 worst places in the world to be born, and I landed at number 2. So yeah, it was a pretty. It was not a good time to be there, but
Right.
that's what really kind of pushed us to look into, what is going to happen to us in the future, because my parents recognized even after the war was over, which was around 1995, that there really wasn't going to be much opportunity in the country. And that's what they were really thinking about, was my brother and me. My brother was born in 97, so he wasn't an idea yet. So they were thinking about me, and my brother came soon after there. So they realized really after my brother was born that they were trying to figure out how we could stay and live there. Even my name, when I was born, my name is Boyan, which my parents wanted to name me Nicholas. Actually, the reason why they didn't go with Nicholas is because Nicholas, as we all know, is kind of a name identifiable by religion. They didn't want me to
Right.
have problems because of my name, so they went with Boyan, which is an Eastern European name, but not one you can tie to any religion really. So that's the assumption was for me to grow up there. And I always think like, gosh, I would have been a farmer there if I would have grown up. I have one of my best friends now, he works at Robin Hood actually, and we always joke because his family's from the same town as me. I always joke like we would have still met each other, but we would just be farming together somewhere instead of doing finance. So
Right.
what happened was, after the war, my brother was born. They were looking at opportunities like what they could do for our future, for us to have a chance to do something. So my parents actually, my brother and I got Croatian citizenship, and that's because my dad's side is Croatian, as I mentioned. So the plan was for a little bit to move to Croatia. We actually had, my dad told me the story. We had multiple times had like our bags, like our house packed, getting ready to move to Croatia. And then something would happen with, like, after the war, that stopped us from moving. And then they even looked at Australia for a little bit, but really my dad always wanted to go to the United States. We just didn't think we had a chance. So we
Right.
finally got this kind of, I don't know what the status was, but through the war, we got a refugee status that allowed us, basically got us in line to get into the United States. But there was a situation that happened. This was early 2001 when we were getting ready to move. September of 2001 rolls around, and as we know, 9/11 happened. Massive tragedy. My dad told me the story of where he was. He was traveling to Croatia to get ready to like fill out some kind of paperwork to prepare for us to leave the country to come to the United States. And he's sitting
Right.
there dealing with that. And on the TV, he starts to see what's happening with 9/11. And gosh, like, what a horrible thing
Oh,
that happened to this country. And here we are thinking, we're trying to get away from problems. and we see what's happening now in the United States, and we were just concerned, obviously, for what was going on in the country, and we didn't know what was going to happen to us. So we got delayed in our travels. They told us basically, hey, you're still in line, but we don't know what's going to happen. So we got delayed, thankfully, only a few months. In February of 2002 is when we got our chance to move over. So we had cousins in Arizona, and that's what brought us over. I still remember my first night we were in Chicago and we had a layover. And I remember they told us, so because our plane got delayed, they gave us a hotel room for the night and they told us we would get a free dinner. And I remember thinking in my head, free dinner? Are you kidding me? That is
Right.
awesome. What a, like, this country's already winning.
Right.
But
Exactly.
we ended up being so tired, and I didn't understand how like the time lapse between flights. And we got to Chicago and it was dark, but in my head I thought it was morning still, for the time difference. So we fell asleep like right away, and we didn't end up making it to the free meal. So then we ended up going to Arizona the next day, and that was, yeah, my arrival to the United States in 2002.
So then American owe you a free meal.
Yeah, yeah, I guess you're right. Next time I'm in Chicago airport, I'm gonna say, hey, where's that free meal?
Right. And how beautiful. And so 23 years later, then you managed to transform your situation over the years and ultimately becoming a regional director for financial planning services at a prestigious organization. So how did you accomplish that? And what mindset mastery shapes have been crucial to your journey?
I think I can connect this question to my journey and story that I just shared because they kind of go hand in hand. It was actually when I became an adult, and you'll laugh at this, CiCi. At the time, I actually had like bleach blonde hair. It was after I finished college, and I made a bet with some friends that they didn't think I would really bleach my hair, and I really did. And it was
Right,
when I was finishing college. So my buddy and I wanted to go back to Europe and go visit. He's from over there in the same region. He's Serbian, so we wanted to go back over there. And we go back over there. I just wanted to see my family. I literally had blonde hair. I was clearly crazy at the time, but we get there and I started to like have this moment. We were on top of my, I went to go visit I went with my grandparents and my uncle up to some gravestones that were a lot of my family from the war that I never met. So it was like a confusing thought because I realized, like, man, I had lost a lot of family members that I never even got to meet. Like, it was a very tragic thing, but at the same time I like didn't have this pain that I see a lot of people that I know have been to way more funerals than I have because I don't have that much family left. So much of them either, passed away in the war from previous wars. Honestly, we had a kind of a smaller family because of that.
right,
So I started to realize, like, oh my gosh, like here I am, not on a gravestone, living my life in America, but I could be one of these people. And I started to see gravestones of like people that were not my family, that were 2 year olds, 3 year olds, 6 year olds. You'd see born 1991, gone 1994, born 1992, gone 1992, horrible things like that. And it started to make me think about, like, this is what real life can look like. And I started to like just really pay attention in the country. There's just way more graveyards than I ever realized that there are here in the United States, for example. Like, we're a small country, but everywhere I go, there's graveyards. So it made me realize, like, okay, this is what the real world can look like. And it started to give me perspective. And that's now what I like realize. People feel sorry for me sometimes because when I share my story, they're like, I can't believe what you've been through. But for me, like, as long as I always had my family, we loved each other. But what it really gave me was this perspective. It was like the silver lining to this dark cloud, right? Was it gave me this perspective, which became like my superpower. And that's what
right,
I wanted to kind of talk about in terms of answering your question. I don't think I was ever that great at finance. I kind of stumbled into finance, but I think what helped me with my career and moving up and my team finding a place for me and now settling into this place where I am into more of a leadership role, really it was all resilience and all perspective because I started to wake up and I had this kind of realization of what my parents had to go through. My parents went through this when they were in their late 20s. So like I think about what my late 20s looked like. I was thinking about which music concert I wanted to go to here in the United States,
right,
And like I think about what they had to go through and it like gave me this perspective of like gosh, like I felt so ungrateful for a little bit of complaining about my daily life with work, oh gosh, I have this meeting that I don't want to deal with. It's like that's not real problems. I started to like just think about that more and more. And I started to think about like really nothing in my life is truly real problems, that I've kind of built up this idea that I'm living struggle, but I'm really not. Like everything is great. And I started to understand, like really live by this through humbleness and gratefulness. Like I really I think like gratefulness is something we all talk about, but I think if you can like really, really dive deep into gratefulness and like think about what that means. And for me, what pushed me into diving deep was having this very profound experience, right? So now every day I truly wake up and I kiss the ground I walk on because I know the world I come from. And I know the world that many people are living still today and people I don't know about that are in horrible places around the world that I probably never will step foot in. But gosh, just from my own vision, which I don't like, and what I saw, what my family saw, I had PTSD until I was about 13 years old, and I was only there for I don't even remember the war, CC. But two things, like the thunder stuck with me. The when thunderstorms would happen here in the U.S. because it reminded me of artillery hitting back home. When I was a baby, I lived in a basement my first 2 years, so artillery would hit above. And my mom said one time she literally thought our house was going to be gone. One hit so hard, and she
Right.
went up, and we had a little river in front of our house. And on the other side of the street was other houses. And my mom said she went out and one of the houses across the street got hit, and pieces of the house were on our yard. And she thought our house got hit from how loud it was. So that stuck with me. It was probably until like 13, 14 years old. I finally got over thunderstorms because I used to have like sleepovers with friends and there'd be thunder outside and I would literally like start panicking and like crying and putting like getting myself in a ball. And the other thing that was weird is tornado sirens. You know, like the tornado sirens we have here in the US, like the
Right.
brrr, those
Yes.
were our bombing sirens. So that's like what they would play when there were
Oh,
bombs coming. So for the longest time, like I would get very uncomfortable if I would hear that sound. And that like I started to think about as an adult, like back on those memories. Like I didn't think about it much as a kid. It was just like, why am I feeling this way? But as an adult, I started to look back on it. It's like, wow, that was a horribly traumatic experience. And that's real life can be very, very dark. And
right.
thankfully, that's not the life I'm living today. So it really gave me this super fuel, this like rocket fuel, where every day I wake up so grateful. And my wife still knows it, even with our house, everything I have here. This is like all I think about is like because of a war, it happened to force my family to look for other opportunities for my brother and I. And all of that pushed me to end up where I am today, really living my best life, where I have more opportunity than I ever was supposed to have. Again, I joke with my friend that we were supposed to be farmers somewhere in the middle of nowhere together, but here I am talking to you. I have all the opportunity in the world, and that has really put the fuel of God in me in terms of I just can't let days be wasted. I wake up and I say, today's February 1st, 2025. There's only one of those I'm ever going to have. There's such a good chance that I could have never experienced this day. I can't let this day go to waste. So hopefully my interactions with you, when I'm around people, I'm always projecting positivity because that's like what I want my impact to be on this world is I've went through what I went through so that I can have this perspective. Anything I can do to pass that on to other people and get them to think a little bit bigger than themselves and feel that gratitude and that positivity of, gosh, my life is actually a lot better than I think it is. I will absolutely lean into that. That was when you asked me about this podcast. That's the first thing that comes into my mind is like if I can just share a little bit of that positivity. So I want to go back to now fully answering your question. Sorry, a little bit long winded, but that's what really helped me figure out my career because I was never that great on the analytical side. I was never that great with. I passed my Series 7 by 1%. But what always got me through is, you know, when change would happen in my jobs, you know how it is. People always immediately want to react negatively because it's something different. But for me, it's like I think about my job this way. Like I think about my interactions with you. I wake up, I'm in my man cave right now. This is the same place I talk to you when we're working, right? I
Right.
roll out of bed. I get to go up to my man cave. I get to talk to people that enjoy talking to me, that are looking forward to talking to me. And that's what a great position to be in life. Like, what do I truly have to complain about? Something happens every now and then where I have to help an advisor. I get more meetings than I expected. That's not something that ruined my day. Imagine what my parents are going through. So, like, really, that's what helped me move along is more so and when you're in a company that really appreciates true teamwork, right, being a team player, pushing others forward, I think that's the strengths that I leaned into much more than being good at finance per se. Like I said, I passed our main exam by 1% here, so for me it was really leaning into that. My team knows me. I'm like, I think honestly sometimes I joke they just keep me around not because I actually contribute anything to the financial side. It's because I help keep the culture what it is. People know that, you know, it's you're not going to have a negative day because I'm going to come around and say, but guys, like, look at all this good stuff that's going on. That's just what I'm always going to gravitate towards. And that all comes from that perspective that was given to me from what happened to me. But not even until I went back when I was standing, I will never forget this moment looking down. And I can show you a picture sometime because I have pictures from that place. It's this graveyard. On my grandparents lived in this village, like I mentioned. You climb this little mountain near their graveyard or near their house, and it takes you
Right.
to this graveyard on top of this mountain, and you can see our city from it. And that's like where it just like all hit me, you know, because I was an adult, so I was just thinking about this more than just there's not enough video games in this country. I want to go back to the United States. So I started to just think about it a lot deeper, and it just really hit me that day. And I came back to the United States with a different perspective, you know, and things like I have a little sports car. It's nothing special, but gosh, like I remember thinking like I'm never gonna have that. So now like every single day, I've had the car for close to 8 years now. It's got over 100,000 miles, but every day I still come down. I put my hand on it. If it was clean enough, I would give it a nice kiss and say, "I'm so glad I have you." And that's like everything. My house, my wife knows. She'll see me standing around our house sometimes, and I'm just looking around. She's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "I just can't believe I live here. I can't believe that we have this." Because when I went back to my country, I realized like how small our houses were too over there, you know, because I was a little kid. So it all felt big to me. But now going back, it's like, gosh, like the little world that we come from and the opportunity I have now, it's just really powerful to me.
Oh,
Sorry, I didn't shut up
beautiful.
there for a little bit.
That's beautiful. Beautiful to hear that. And Boyan, that's a you could have so many opportunities in various fields. So why finance? Why is the finance planning, financial planning is so crucial for you?
Good question. I ask myself that a lot of times because I'm really not that passionate about finance. Like, I don't find IRAs interesting. I don't find strategies for reinvesting interesting. I don't find different tax planning strategies interesting. Although that's what I've kind of developed myself in and gotten good in. For me, I wanted to make an impact with my family too. My family always had really good technical skills. My dad, as I mentioned, was a DJ, always knew how to build everything. He was very handsy. When we moved here to the United States, like I mentioned, my parents really had to restart. So my dad went from his cool jobs to being an electric like being an electrician really, and like laying down doing stuff for homes. So he was really handsy, and he always had good skills with technology. My mom was an engineer. My brother is a coder. So then there was me. My parents always said Boyan doesn't shut up, as we can see by how long it took me to shut up on your last question. My parents would always joke like, oh, Boyan
Love
doesn't
it.
have any actual skills, he just talks a lot. So what I realized, I had a boss that actually told me to try the whole finance thing. So I said, okay, I told her initially the finance was the one thing I didn't want to do because I just thought I had the same idea in my head that probably a lot of our clients have, which is, oh, I'm just sitting there crunching numbers all day. And that's really not what finance is. So I started to realize like, okay, this is a really impactful topic. I got my license and I realized like I can really help my family with this because like many people that come from a country like mine, my parents don't know what stocks are. They're the kind of people that if they have a debt in their life, they just want to work overtime and accumulate more paychecks to try to pay that debt down than thinking about some kind of strategy to actually work through that overtime. So I wanted to be able to bring something back to my family because, like I mentioned, everybody had such hands-on skills in my family. So I thought, okay, I can figure out this finance thing. And so that was like the beginning of my journey and what motivated me to really start to figure it out, and definitely helped out because I finally started to have a skill that I could bring to the table and help my family with. But what I really started to realize in finance, because like I said, I'm not too passionate in finance, but I started to do well in finance because what I realized is I'm a really good connector. Going back to my point about I don't shut up, I'm very interested in people's stories. You know, we're here talking about all of this on this podcast. That's the kind of person I am. And I realized leaning into that was much more helpful to me in finance because that was like my superpower, if anything, connecting much more than me trying to get good at understanding different tax planning strategies. So that's when I started to realize, you know, it's not really finance that so much drives me. It's that I've kind of built a home and an understanding in finance, and I can really lean into being a connector through the role that I have, especially with what we're doing in financial planning and now what we're doing with my team kind of expanding. Like really, for me, it's like I want to be able to go back to my parents and say, hey, we actually shifted this whole industry, which through us doing that actually impacted Americans' lives for the better. Because for my parents, like all they wanted me to do was get by. They wanted me to do okay here, get my education, be able to provide for myself. So they are more than happy with me because I have a 401k. That was it for them. They're like, hey, Brian has a 401k. He's saving. We made it. We passed as parents. But for me, like I think about the sacrifice that they had to go through. My parents had to give away the best years of their life. Also, my brother and I could have an opportunity. Also, we could do something here. So for me to come back to them and say, okay, yeah, I've just got a paycheck and I've kind of figured it out. I just felt like I started to, same thing when I went back to my country, I started to think about all this is like, it's not really good enough. So I need to be able to provide some sort of impact because I want to be able to come back to my parents and say, like, hey, all that sacrifice, I know you guys just wanted me to be okay. And I am, thank God, but it wasn't for nothing. We were actually able to do some things in this country. And I know I'm not the president, but we're able to actually impact households out there. People that you'll never even meet are doing slightly better because of you guys bringing me here and allowing me to connect people and do better work for them. So that's kind of what it became for me, and my passion now to continue to develop my career, because I'll tell you, I'm not motivated financially. My bar for myself was extremely low. Coming from where I come from, when I got my entry level job in finance, I was like, I made it. I'm at the top of the mountain. We're rich. So for me to be where I am now, finance does not drive me. I'm very happy and humbled by the fact that I have been able to move my career along with that. But really now it's about making an impact for me. So that's what drives me more than anything.
Profoundly beautiful. And Boyan, we're curious that who is the old Boyan and who is the new Boyan?
Oh, that's a good one. I've never thought about that kind of in preparation, but I can give you a good answer on that. So old me, something that I think my parents misguided me on, and I tell them that now is, and this is good feedback for all us other internationals out there. My parents kind of taught me coming into the United States that I would not be accepted as an outsider, that I would not be accepted for my sounding different, that I would not be accepted for my outside ideas, that if I want to get by and succeed and be accepted in friendships, that I would need to assimilate and fit in. And there's absolutely truth to that. I think when you're in somebody else's home, it's important to understand the rules and how you should act in their home. But also, I think my parents made me lose sight of some of the things that really like made us stand out in a bright in a good way too. Like you'll notice I really don't have much of an accent, and that was intentional. And that was all for my parents, like wanting me to fit in, and for me wanting to fit in as well. I used to, all the things that I just told you that you said are profound, and part of probably why you wanted me to talk to you are things I used to hide and downplay as much as possible. I hated my name, for example, because it was different and it was like an immediate conversation starter to me needing to tell you about all the things that make me different than you, you know? So it was something I just wanted to fit in and be American as possible early on. But as I grew up, you know, what changed is I realized my bosses actually, when I started to work at this company, had me present my story because one of them found out everything that I shared with you. And then that's just because he asked me, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. And he says, "Hey, I'd like for you to share that story with the rest of the team." And it's when I shared it in front of some of my colleagues and I saw people in tears and people reached out to me afterwards. It was like, that was very eye opening for me. I realized like my parents were wrong on that. I think this country really celebrates and appreciates that kind of diversity and a story like that. And at the end of the day, they all understand that I'm most proud to be an American more than anything. But people really celebrate these differences in my background and the story I come from. So that's where I've definitely changed is I really wear that on my sleeve now. I love sharing my story. I love trying to give people perspective. And I used to think like what I told you at the beginning, like nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And I also felt kind of egotistical about it. Like, why am I telling you about my worldview? Right. But what I realized is I do have kind of a very unique setup for better or worse in terms of how my life started. So I do think I have a story to share that gives people perspective. So the biggest thing that's changed for me is I've become really proud of that. And that's what made me want to learn about my culture, my country, is because I started to realize, wow, people aren't shaming me for this. They want to know more about this. It's enhancing their life in a little bit to get perspective from me. So it made me want to understand more about it. It made me want to understand more not only about my culture, but also about what does it mean to be an American, right? Like what makes Americans America? Or what makes Americans American? Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It made me want to learn more about history, right? Learn about what got us here, and same for my own country's history. And I'm at the point now where I'm telling my parents, like, "Hey, did you know this happened to our country in the 1700s?" And they're like, "Oh no, I had no idea," right? So that's kind of like what's happened, and that's the me that used to be versus the me today. So it really, I'd say, like my perspective shift was the biggest thing.
And what are your thoughts about chasing the American dreams? And what does the American dreams mean to you?
I think it can mean exactly what you want it to be. America is such an extreme country. I'm sure you'd agree with me. Of you can see some of the worst ways of living life and some of the best ways of living life. So I think it's totally up to you to choose your destiny. I think my dad passed that on to me because my dad really always saw America as opportunity of you can achieve. And I really think the moment it's almost like people used to talk about there was that what's it called, like the where you would just think about something, manifestation, right, and it would happen. It's not really that. That's like some witchcraft, but really like there is a mentality too, like if you really think that you can achieve, then you're going to start doing the actions in life that are going to lead you to the results. And when you're in a place like where I come from, I think you start to feel this realization of even if I put my best foot forward and try to achieve, it's never going to open a door for me. So it kind of kills your ability to dream almost. You know, you kind of look around and say, okay, this is what everybody's doing, that's what I need to do to get by as well. And you kind of almost have like this numb life, right? But when you live somewhere like here, you have some of these doors open, and it like almost lights this fire in you that makes you think like, wait, that was achieved, that happened, and I didn't think that was possible. So what else is possible? Where you're close to somebody, right? And if you can let go of jealousy and those types of things and see somebody that really achieves and realize like, wow, my friend, one of my buddies, we grew up together. I remember, as I mentioned, he's from the same part of the world as I am. I remember his parents having to sell his things uh just so they could get by when we were early in high school, and that was like so sad for me to see. We weren't doing much better, but it was like, wow, I can't believe you have to sell your son's, like, his PlayStation, things like that, so they could pay the bills. And then they started to do a lot better. His dad was a trucker, started to own a truck company, just worked his butt off, started to hire truck drivers, and it was like, wait a minute, you started to see their life turn around. You don't see stories like that for where we're from, and it started to make you realize like, okay, can this be achieved? And what I tell all people, because I
Right.
know there's such a different opinion on it. Like I said, I really think what you determine the American dream is what's going to happen to you. If you think it's all a farce and a lie, that's probably how it's going to go. But if you see it as opportunity and think you can achieve something, I think this is the best place in the world to be able to do so. What I always tell people is people always want to go travel and visit, all the nice places in the world. They want to go visit Shanghai, right? They want to go
Right.
visit Tokyo. They want to go visit Paris. They want to go visit all the places where you're going to see the top of people living the top of life, right? I say go visit somewhere where you see what common people are living like in many parts of the world, and it doesn't have to be my country. Go somewhere where you get to see where there's real struggle, where there's poverty and at a national level, right? Where there's no opportunity. And what I feel in my country, for example, is I here's a good story I can share. I got added to a Facebook group. I went to a small school there for 1 year before I moved to the United States, like a private school. I got added to a Facebook group with all my other classmates as we all grew up. Somebody created this. I looked through the Facebook group. Not one person is still in the country. Everybody has left Western Europe, or I think I'm the only one that made it to the United States. But it shows you there's really no opportunity. So I always tell people go somewhere where it's unfortunately like very bad circumstances, because people always say like, oh, the American dream's a lie or the American dream is absolutely true. But I ask those people, have you ever even left the country? So my thought always is, how can you say something is something or is not something if you don't have anything to compare it against? How can you say it's the best to live here or the worst to live here if you've never stepped foot outside of here? It's all you know. America is the best and the worst place you've ever lived because that's the only place you've ever lived. So I always say, step beyond, go somewhere where life is a little more humble, right? And it'll show you an appreciation and maybe a different understanding for some of the opportunities that we have, and it'll maybe light a fire under you to say, let me go figure out my own path through some of that because I can. And there's a lot of people that would kill to have this chance but don't have it.
Oh, beautiful. In the so I've learned that you have such a natural talents in connecting with people, right? And you mentioned that you love to talk, but truthfully, that's what's your secret? That how can others achieve the similar level of attraction, uh, what the glamour presence that you have?
I think it's find something that really like, and this is like the good old thing that everybody always says, like find something that like really engages you, something that like I like if you work at a company, they always give you like the mission and vision statement, and it's something you read a million times. And oftentimes, because I've seen like a bunch of them through the different jobs I've had, like they were just words on paper. But if you have one that you actually read it and you're like, wait, this feels right. Like I stand behind this. I'm pushing for this. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned. And that's what I learned through my career. Like I said, I realized like finance wasn't really the thing that lights me up, but being a connector was. And that's what I see my role as. I get to be this connector through this base level of financial knowledge that I have as well. I understand enough about your story on the finance side, so I can really lean into my skills of being a connector to do my job well, right? So what I realized is like, wow, I had to like, again, think about perspective, because I could just look at this, and this is what I mean too, by you get to determine what it is for yourself. I could just look at it as, oh, my job is a finance job. That's not really what I wanted to do. I'm not that pumped up about, financial statements and IRAs and different strategies. But if I instead look at it as, wow, my job is a connector, which yes, I need to understand your world a little bit on the financial side, but really I get to be a connector more than anything. I don't have to go out and have the client conversations that you do, right? So it shifted my perspective. I really get to do the thing that I love. And that made me understand our mission and vision. And I became attached to my work, right? And the way I would describe it is like right now, I don't feel like this is a burden talking to you, just like I don't feel like it's a burden talking to you on a Monday about our business, because it's all just one flow for me now. I wanted to find a way, because what I realized when I had jobs that I wasn't attached to, wasn't engaged by, something that really frustrated me was thinking about the fact that I'm spending 40 to 50 hours a week waiting for this time to be over, waiting for, I can't wait till I'm out of here, right? And I thought, that is crazy. Am I really going to spend the next 40 years of my life like this? So how do I get it to the point where my life is the way it is when I'm with my friends, where I'm just like, oh, I really don't want time. I wish time could just stop right now because I'm really enjoying it, right? And that's in a crazy way. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I'm just crazy and I've convinced myself, but that's where I'm at with my career. I looked at it as I get to really connect, and it really keeps driving me up in my career. So it makes me want to push forward. When things change with my team, when I have to figure out something new, I really welcome it, because it's like, okay, this is a new tool for me to be able to go back and do what I love anyway. And then in turn, what happens is now my day is just one flow, right? Whether it's work or the fun stuff after work, it's all the stuff I enjoy doing now. I don't look forward to work being over the way I used to. And that to me is like the biggest win.
So what is that the super fuel that's keep you pushing forward? What is that? Is that a gratitude, or is that so beliefs, or what is that?
Two things. Yeah, I think it starts with gratitude. Gratitude is my fuel, right? Because like we all have days where we hear of something motivational or something bad happens in life and we say, no, that's never going to happen again. And we're going to put our best foot forward, and we're going to have a good day, and we're going to have good business. We're going to work out. We're going to do all the things we should. But I wanted to find a way of like, how do I make sure I still get up and do that on my worst days, when bad things happen, when I'm at my darkest, when I'm at my lowest? And I think gratitude is part one of that. So that's my fuel. That's how I am able to get up every day. And I'd ask you, have you ever seen me honestly in a different mood?
No,
Am I pretty? So yeah, I think that's like
no.
how I test myself. Is I know I wake up every day trying to put my best forward, and I know that the fuel that I can always pull on is gratitude, because I look around again. It's like little things. Like before I start my workday, I'm like, gosh, I can't believe I live in this house. So then it takes me to the next stage of, we did the work to get this house. I need to go do more of the work to make more of this happen, because clearly I can, right? Look what working achieved for me. I can achieve more. So that's what the fuel is every single day. But the other part of it is, and this is where we talked about philosophy a little bit, like a big thing that I think I realized about life through reading philosophy, and just kind of like, I love to deep think about my own why, what it is for me to be Bojan, because I was born where I was born, but I happened to move where I lived, and that defined me in many different ways. But what is like the soul inside of that? What is the me inside of, what do I want, right? Like underneath the Bosnian that I was born as, underneath the American that I now live as, underneath the finance person, like what does my soul truly want? And what I realized, that's when I realized like I truly want to always be engaged, like really enjoying what I'm doing every part of the day, and not just the fun stuff, but like my work, progressing myself, even things like workouts. I've now see them as like part of the physical side of pushing the journey forward. And what I realized is, I think in life, you're kind of like pushing and working hard because you're waiting for like this win or this kind of like mountaintop. And you're like, okay, finally, we're done with that. Like, I don't have to think about that. That stress is gone. But it's almost like this sad realization that the battle never ends. There is no end to the mountaintop. Even if I won the lottery tomorrow, I'm going to invent some new problem. Whether it's my fitness and saying I'm not in good enough shape, or I don't have as good enough relationship with my cousins as I would like. There's going to be something that I'm going to think is a problem that I'm not working on enough, that's going to stress me, that's going to want me to be anxious. So it's realizing, it's almost like accepting that there is no end to the battle, right? Because I think what we look for as humans sometimes is like, oh, let me just get through this work week, and then we're okay. Then I can relax for the weekend. And then you like have to build it up again, right? Like, oh, it's Monday. How do I get through this? But it's realizing there is no end to the battle. Even if you're retired, you're going to then figure out like the next thing that's stressing you out. I see it in my father-in-law with his garage and his garden and his cars. And he buys like these broken cars now because he has to have a battle in his life. He has to be fighting this car that's not working and getting the parts and figuring that out. And that's just who we are. And there is no, I think we are like expecting this point in life where everything is just good forever, right? Like we're at peace, there's a
Right.
zen, there's balance, but there is no such thing as that. Because even if you are given full comfort, if I win the lottery tomorrow and I can have whatever I want, there's actually an anime I watched, One Punch Man, that kind of taught me this lesson, where I realized like if you had everything in this world, you wouldn't want it, because it's going to make you very miserable. So I started to think about that a lot, is like I always need to be fighting in life. There is no end to the battle. So it helps me get up every day with that gratefulness as my fuel, just expecting that I'm going to need to push today, that there is no, oh, like we finally made it through, because I think all that does is lead you to constant disappointment, because you get through something just to find out that there's the next. I always call it, sorry for I use that an anime reference. Now I'll use a video game reference. It's like in video games, you have a boss that you have to beat, right? So there's always going to be a next boss. It's almost accepting that helped me really strive for more in life, because you don't fall down as much. You don't get beat down because, like I said, when you have this expectation of life to let up, you're always going to be disappointed over and over, because even if you get to this income level that you feel like was the big problem, now you're going to have a new problem of, oh, I have so many taxes, and oh, so many of my family members want my money. And now I have to take care of my cousin who can't support himself because I'm the only one who's got it figured out. So what I'm saying is, it's almost accepting that there's always going to be this next fight, even until the day we pass, really. And that's part of the journey. That's who we are supposed to be. And I think that's part of like the balance. And this is like the biggest thing I think about with philosophy is like that yin and yang. You want to seek balance. You want comfort, but you also want discomfort. So I'll give you an example of that. Over the last year and a half, have been training Muay Thai and MMA, jiu-jitsu. And it's like something some of the guys in there I train with, like, you can tell they love it. They love the getting punched in the face. They love the violence of it. I think it's kind of crazy, but because it is crazy and it's because it's this challenge, I throw myself into that fire. I just did it last night, for example,
Right.
because every time I walk out of there, I feel like I overcame, and that's forcing myself into this fight that I didn't even need to have, gets me a lot more ready for the rest of life. When I have to do a big presentation for work, my boss will say, "Oh, are you nervous about this?" I'll think like, "No way. I was just getting kicked in the head by this crazy guy last night. Like, you think I'm worried about this?" And that's what I mean. Like, I almost want myself to be in pressure all the time. Does that make sense?
Fabulous. This is a fascinating thing. It's a blessing to hear all of this.
It's a
In
blessing to share.
right. And in and Bojan, also that's another listener of us is have these questions. Um
Mhm.
and I love to pass on this. So behind closed doors, right? At midnight, when Boyan sit down in front of your desk, engaging a piece in your mind.
Mhm.
So who who are the role models on your mind at that moment?
So I would actually say two of my best friends are one of my bosses and one of my coaches from the past. And why? Because they're truly people that live their own life. They walk a one of one path. And that's like my biggest goal in life. And I think the hardest thing in this world is to like truly find what is your true path, because we're influenced by so many things, from our family to the environment that we're born in. And that's what like made me even think about this, is like I happened to be born where I was born, and then a crazy situation pulled me away from that and turned me into a completely different person, right? The me that grew up here in America is probably a lot different than the me that would have grown up there. So then I think like, okay, so those are these external factors that are shaping me one way or another. But underneath that, again, kind of going back to, there's a soul. And what is that soul, right? Like that's the part that to me is hard to figure out. Like, how do I reach down there and figure out what does that soul really want? Does the soul really want what American Bojan wants, or does the soul want what Bosnian Bojan wants, right? So what I've found is my role models are the people that I think are truly the best representations of people that live a one of one life. And what I mean by that is, you look around, so many people, I always call them non-playable characters, NPCs. You hear that term a lot now, that because they look like they are living a life that's been lived 100 times, And I went to university. I'm sure you felt this way too. You'd meet someone and you think like, I know 10 people just like you. You watch the same shows, you like the same interests, you're living the same life, you're probably gonna have the same career, date the same type of people. And for me, it was always like, I wanted to find my own path. I don't care about what path is where. I don't care if this path is guaranteed success. It's not my own. I need to find my own. And even if mine has a lot more rose bushes that I'm going to be poked by, a lot more rocks that I'm going to trip on, I want to go on my own path. So for me, my boss is someone that I think truly lives an independent life. He's not influenced by much. One of my best friends, the same thing. He's this crazy guy who he said like, yeah, I might just up and leave, because he works remotely as well for finance. And he's like, yeah, I might just move down to Argentina and get myself like on a mountain by myself, and I'll have good internet. I'm going to take care of myself. And like, what a crazy idea. But the fact that like he lives his own life, like he doesn't care what external opinion wants. He doesn't care what his friends think he should do. All of us are maybe living in one area. He doesn't care. He has his own kind of ideas and dreams of where he thinks he should end up. And I strive for that, because I think that's really hard to do, because it takes a lot of bravery. It takes a lot of dropping your ego too, to step beyond, what the world expects of you and what your peers expect of you. Because if, let's say, you have two siblings and they're both successful in finance and living in a white picket fence house and being successful, and what if you want to be one of those people that travels in an RV around the country and does something else? That's like, to me, like the people that are brave enough to step beyond the expectations and find their own path are the people that end up being my role models, because I think through interacting with them, seeing how they live their life, working with them, being friends with them, it helps me try to find my own rocky path. That's, my one of one life, what my soul wants.
That is magnificent. Um, so you previously you mentioned about, you have a passion about philosophy, and
Hmm?
what is it about a philosophy that fascinated you so much? And you mentioned about yin and yang, and are there any like we'll say a piece of a philosophy that plays a significant role on your success journey?
Yeah, I think because going back to the soul piece, like philosophy is almost like the study of like trying to figure out your own soul, right? And there's so many, philosophy almost teaches you to unwind all of these preconceptions that the world throws upon you and expectations, like even silly stuff like one I always like would joke about is like I remember being in college and I took an existentialism class, which was philosophy, and I had a cookie in the morning, and somebody was like, why are you eating a cookie in the morning? Like that's nothing but sugar. And the joke I made back to him is like, it's the most American thing to have a donut for breakfast, which is literally just another ball of sugar. But because we've all said this ball of sugar is okay, nobody's
Right.
going to say anything to me about that. But if this ball of sugar, which is a
That's
cookie I'm eating,
right.
it's things like that. Philosophy helps me like look at everything, like the world like that. Like, is this something that actually like makes sense? Or is this something that we decided makes sense one day, as people? So that's what I love about philosophy, is it kind of helps me separate those. And because when you separate, like, this is the world telling us that this is right versus this is actually not like nature telling me this is right, it helps me figure out like what is the soul's path through that. And to give you I know you said like, is there one that sticks with me? I love Marcus Aurelius. There's a book called The Daily Stoic. I actually have it here. um I'll hold it up so you can see it a little bit. Daily Stoic, and it's basically like just daily readings about just different meditations for wisdom, perseverance, and the art of living. But a lot of it is around Marcus Aurelius. He was one of the Roman kings, like during the Roman Empire, and he was one of the five good kings. I think he was the last of the good kings in Rome. And the reason why I love his kind of view on it is he wrote these things called the Meditations, which was a book that he wrote for himself that nobody was ever supposed to see. It ended up getting published, and it was just all these kind of philosophical little statements that he would write. And his perspective I loved so much because he was the king. And if you know Roman history at the time, they like ruled the whole world. So this guy was by far the most powerful human being on the planet. And he hated all of the power. He hated all of the responsibility, but he felt that I'm born to do this. I have to do the best job at it.
Right.
And he saw all of us as we're just people, all equal, that are happen to be born where we are, trying to do our best version of what that is. And for me, I happen to be born as this king guy, so I have to be the best version of a king. You're a peasant or whatever, a farmer, you have to be the best version of a farmer. And sometimes he's like they would ask him for crazy things, his people, right? Like when they come up and say, king, I need this, and he would say, like, they would say crazy things that I like previous kings would execute them for, but they just don't know any better. Everybody's trying their best. And that was like his belief, is like everybody's always trying their best, but people don't know any better. And I can't let that change me, because in his life, the only way he could fail is if he failed his vision to himself, which was to be a good man. And that's like something the judge, jury, and executioner is yourself. You can be a good man and trick everybody else, knowing deep down inside you're doing horrible things. He needed to be a good man only to prove to himself that he could be a good man, right? Not to you, not to the whole world, even if he tricked everybody and got them to believe it. No, he needed to truly be good to himself, to the jury, to the judge that was himself, right? And you can't lie to yourself, right? Well, you can, I guess, but deep down, like, the truth. So that's what he always wanted, was to be this benevolent leader and just do his best. And that it was more about doing it for himself and not letting himself down than, his what he thought what a good king needed to be, which led him to being the best king, though. So that's like what I really love about him, is that had all the power in the world, yet he wanted to just live a normal life in a way. And he thought about all those normal stresses that we all have, so he was stressed about all those same things, about his own ego, about, worries about relationships and stuff like that. The most powerful man in the world. So that's like what really, like I said, helps me kind of look at the world through that soul lens and help me separate what does the world want from me versus what do I want, but truly me, right? Not what did my parents teach me that I think I want? What did my company teach me that I think I want? What does truly my soul want?
Magnificent. Uh, the Boyan, we are wrapping up. Like we have three more questions here.
Okay.
I wanted to pivot to another like question from the listener. This is related about what's happening like last week, especially about artificial intelligence regarding of the deep seek
Oh,
developments, right? And so from
good
your
work, right?
yeah, right, from your perspective, right? Who do you consider the winners and the losers in this scenario? And also that's what might this mean for various sectors of the economy, and are you bullish on it?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think this is like totally one of those internet moments, like when the internet came around. Like I saw this video from the late 90s where it was on the news, and it was like these news broadcasters talking about the internet when it was early. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, I guess the internet's okay. Like you can send these things called emails, but like I don't know. It just seems like that's a lot. We're making a lot of big fuss about nothing. And that's like what the way it feels about AI sometimes now. People are like, oh, it's like a better Google. I don't think people understand the gravity of what this means. Like, I think this is going to achieve, and not, you're asking ultimately somebody who's not an expert in this at all. I will say I've been using ChatGPT since pretty much it rolled out for personal use. Like, I was in Europe late 2021 when I started to use it, I think, or early 2022, somewhere there. And it's, I think, it's one of those things that's like yin and yang. It's like can be potential for really bad things, and that's like the people that worry that it's going to take over the world. We're going to have the Terminator happening. Like I see there is people that can use this for very bad stuff. I think it's already happening, right? To trick and manipulate people, to do scams. But I also think like it unlocks so much potential. I think for someone like myself, I told you I used to make YouTube videos. I was always held back by the technical side. It was hard for me to do a lot of the editing. I would do it, but I had like, I wanted to do like really cool editing. I wanted to like have the kind of editing that you would expect to see in a professional video. And I would do like a little bit
Right.
of it, but it would truly take me like 12 hours to get the simplest little 3-second frame to change. And that's like where things like AI can close the gap for someone who has like good ideas, imagination, but lacks the technical skills. Well, now I can close that gap. And before you could do that too, but you needed a lot of money. You needed to hire people. You needed resources, but now it's so much easier. So I think it's something that it's going to be a tool that can be used by good people to really create some of the best, but it's something that can be used in very negative ways. There's going to be ramifications of people losing their jobs because of this, undoubtedly, right? Like all change, it's not just like people want things to be black and white, and it's never going to be that way, especially with something this big. It's going to be gray, meaning there's going to be good, there's going to be bad, but I'd like to think that the overwhelming majority will be good things.
Thank you for sharing your perspective. And earlier you mentioned about a book that you are currently reading. It's called A Daily Stoic, right?
Yep.
And any recommendation for other books?
Hmm. Let me think. I'm actually usually not one to read many of like the self-help. I usually like reading if I'm reading nonfiction, it's usually history. And if I'm reading, or I read a lot of fiction too, actually. So I'm trying to think something that's really impacted me more recently. Let me look at my recent reads too.
The fictions you're reading, which one you find more fascinating?
Um, I recently reread the Artemis Fowl series. Those were like some of my favorite, and that's like what I mean by fiction. I love I grew up, I learned English a lot through reading like the Harry Potters, through reading Aragon, those types of
Right.
books, The Hobbit, Lord of the
Right.
Rings. So I've recently been rereading the Artemis Fowl series. It's about like this, it's in the UK. There's like fairies and magic, and this guy who's like this super genius who starts to detect that there's this magical world kind of underneath ours, and he starts to work with them. And it's kind of like Harry Potter in a way. So that's what I would say in terms of fiction. In terms of nonfiction, I went back and audio booked Band of Brothers recently, like the World War II book, and I really like that. There's the HBO show as well that's really good.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And Boya, any final thoughts that on your mind or heart you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, I mean I'm humbled for anybody that's made it this far into listening to anything about me. This is very, like I said, I never thought I would be here. So really thankful for anybody that's made it this far. All I could say is, think a little bit beyond yourself, look internally to your soul, try to figure out what it is that can give you perspective to help figure out what drives you, right? Because I think that's like where all this philosophy and trying to find what my soul wants, because if I can figure that out, then I can figure out what really engages me, meaning like really gets me excited to get up that day and work, which is like now my career is aligning that way. And that's when all the tangible stuff starts to come into place, your career, things that you want in life, development. So I would just start to look more internally, right? Like look beyond and try to figure out what the world wants of me versus like what really kind of lights me up as a person for my soul, what engages me so I can do more of that every day and not kind of get caught in this life of wanting temporary wins. Like that's one thing I learned is, if we get caught up looking for these wins, whether that's like a promotion and then we're kind of not happy until that next thing happens. It's finding like something that every day, part of the journey, you're excited for that next part of the journey, not just like these kind of destination points, if that makes sense.
I just feel like I had a wisdom banquet, uh, full of wisdoms. Truly appreciated. And
Yeah, it was nice to talk to you about this stuff too, outside of our usual work conversations. Thank you for having me on, sincerely.
thank you. And as we wrap up here, and then so how about let's take a moment and to reflect on the invaluable insights that we've just gained today, and your journey from Bosnia as a refugee to becoming a regional director of financial planning is truly inspiring and is a testament to the power of dedication, continuous learning, and personal growth. So we are like especially grateful for your sharing and the rich history of Bosnia with us. And of course, your story have painted a vivid picture of a country with a diverse cultural heritage and resilient spirit. So it's really fascinating to hear how your background, your experiences have shaped your approach to becoming to help in the financial planning sector. So for all of our listeners that we will not forget that personal development is an ongoing journey, just like Boyan mentioned, and we embrace every opportunity to learn, to grow, and challenge ourselves, right? So success isn't only just about a personal, isn't just about a professional achievement, but it's about becoming a better version of ourselves every day. Can I say that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's for me,
Right.
it's 1% better every day is kind of what I shoot for. I think life is kind of like this, up, down, but you generally want to be trending upwards.
Right. And then, Boyan, this we are truly thankful that for your wisdom and experiences that you shared with us. And so we hope our listeners feel like the inspired, just like I do, and the motivated to follow our own path with renewed energies and positivities, right? So together that we can support each other, grow stronger, and make a meaningful impact to in our lives and our communities. So thank you once again for joining us, Boyan, and we are so blessed to have you. And we hope that we can invite you back if that is possible in the future.
It would be my honor. Blessed to be here and hope to get to talk to everybody again. Thank you for having me on.
And thank you everyone, and stay tuned for our next episode. We are inviting a very interesting friend of mine, Tom. Tom. He's a veteran, a relationship builder from Florida. So with over 16 years of experience is helping entrepreneurs fostering stronger relationship with your network. So that is going to be fantastic. So one more time, Boyan, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Until next time, take care and keep thriving for our dreams. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.